You might have heard that Moshe injured his knees in his 20s when he was a young man. He injured one of his knees very badly. So he was walking around, hobbling. He was having a difficult time, going to school. He couldn't work out and do his judo and things of that nature. And then, unfortunately, he was out walking, he slipped, and he injured his other knee. And he was really freaked out, right? So he was a young man. He was a student. He was living, I believe, in Paris at the time. So he went home, went to bed, and filled with anxiety. He's like, how am I going to go to school? How am I going to work? Both my knees are bad. What am I going to do? And as he told the story, he got up in the middle of the night to use the restroom, and his old knee that had been hurt suddenly worked again. That is, he could put weight on the knee that he formerly hadn't been able to put weight on. His newly injured knee was still injured. So he went to the bathroom, he went back, and he went to bed. But he started thinking, what the hell's going on? How is it possible that I've had an injured knee for all these years suddenly heal itself? And he said, and I'm going to get this exact quote, he said, this is years later, he said, for fear of ridicule, I spoke to nobody and remained unsure of what happened. I was convinced there was something mentally wrong with me, as the healing of the knees in hours was unthinkable. Now, a few years later, he came across the work of the Russian, I guess we can call him a physiologist, Speransky, who wrote a book, A Theory for the Basis of Medicine. Now, I've read that thing several times. I have a hard time talking about it because, quite frankly, as far as I'm concerned, it involves the abuse of dogs. I've got 3 dogs right here in this room with me. I've got 3 cats. But I'll tell you just the basics of it. So imagine that he had, say, 5 dogs, and he would inject an irritant. One of the irritants was egg protein. It's an irritant for dogs. They use it for research now on a regular basis. Each dog in the exact same area, the anatomically exact same area, one of the dogs might develop an ulcer after being injected with the egg protein. The second dog might get some type of a skin rash. The third dog might exhibit what would be considered anxiety symptoms. And the fourth dog, something else and something else. So basically, the same irritation, the same stimulant had 5 different effects on 5 different dogs. And when Moshe read that, he was like, aha. He began to realize that it's not that there's always a cause-effect relationship between, say, an injury or a movement or something new that we learn, that the nervous system has its say, so to speak. Something can happen to one person, seemingly the second thing can happen to a second person and a third, and each person's nervous system reacts in a different way. So there's multiple levels of why it's important to talk about that. Number one, very often these days people are looking for controlled research. Does the Feldenkrais method or does the Nagy method, does somatics, does it work for back pain? Does it work for this? Does it work for that? So in order to do this type of research, you have to have a standard procedure that you do to standard people. I personally never met any standard person. But, human beings, like dogs, they can receive a Feldenkrais session or other types of sessions, and their responses are going to be different based on their nervous systems. Another way of saying that is it's going to be different based on their experience, based on how they think about things, based on their beliefs, based on their feeling states, et cetera, et cetera. So, research into somatics, it's a little bit difficult because we are all unique and we do different types of things. We have different types of responses. Now, I'm a big fan of research. I'm very grateful to the people of those that do that. But when I was in a PhD program, 20 years ago, I kept hearing the same thing over and over again. No, you have to standardize what you're doing. You have to do the same thing to each person. I was like, well, you can't do the same thing to each person, because the moment you do that, it's not Feldenkrais. That is, you're not adapting in the moment to the person in front of you. Right? Does that make a little bit of sense? So just a brief beginning here. The name of the guy was Speransky. It was a key moment in Moshe's thinking, right? Moshe's ideas didn't just, drop out of the sky. He was a living, breathing person trying to solve different problems. He had ideas in his mind. Another one was teaching judo to people. And again, in France, it's like, okay, how do you teach someone to kick and do a certain movement if they don't know where their pelvis is, or if they can't feel, how their spine moves? So a lot of the sessions that in the Feldenkrais Guild, they call awareness through movement. I think Anat Banyal calls them neuro movement. There's all kinds of different labels out there. The genesis of that was Moshe literally trying to teach Westerners the basics of how to move their body. And he eventually called that awareness through movement. And that's the verbal work. And then there's the hand-on work that's in the guild. They call it functional integration. It also goes by different names in different communities. So if you ever have something that's happened to you and you've acted in a unique way, or your doctor, your partner, whoever it is, doesn't understand how you've come up with your unique response to it, that's okay. You're actually normal and you're learning in your own way. All right, I hope that was useful to you. Like and subscribe if you want more. I have a lot more on the way. Peace.